Hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band podcast. I'm your host, Benedict Hein. Today, we're going to talk about home recording 101. So after doing a bunch of more advanced topics lately, we decided that we should do one that is a little more basic, but still relevant, even if you know what you're doing and if you've been doing it for a while. So it's always good to go back to these things. There might be something in it that you haven't thought about in a while. So what this episode is going to be about is we're going to talk about what we would do if we were to start over in 2023 and what we would do, what we would buy, what we would focus on, how we would start this thing. Now, this is going to be a fun conversation. So if you're a new listener, first of all, welcome. Thank you for hanging out with us today. If you are already a listener, thank you for coming back. So grateful for every single one of you. And as always, I'm not doing this alone. I'm here with my friend and co-host, Malcolm Owen Flood. Hello, Malcolm. How are you?
Hey, buddy. I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm great too. Thank you. So before we get into today's episode, I have to apologize to our audience because I got a comment on YouTube, and I just have to address this. This was just one comment, but he was so right, and that was because on one of our episodes lately, I think it's 3 episodes back or so from this one, we had like a 15 or 16 minute banter, which is kind of crazy. I just looked at it. He just said, I came here for the content and not what would happen on the weekend or something like this, So the banter is killing me, he said. And I was like, yeah, this is kind of how we do it and our audience appreciates it. But then I went into the video again, or like the podcast again. And it was, in this case, it was like 16 minutes or something, which is really crazy. So we're trying to keep this a little shorter in the future. We're not going to skip the banter. This is an essential part for us, but maybe not 15 or 16 minutes. So if you had to sit through this, I'm
that's pretty
sorry.
long. I can't believe that. That's hilarious. What did we talk about? Probably toe shoes and running.
About all kinds of things. We went down a guitar tone rabbit hole and talked about like guitar emulations. That the episode was not about that at all. Like it's like it's really
that's still like relevant stuff to what we
Yeah.
do, though.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Totally.
But 60 minutes excessive, no matter what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Sorry.
exactly. And there's one thing too, if you are watching this on YouTube, so for those of you who are listening on the podcast app, there's also a video version of it on YouTube. And if you're watching that, we will have a chapter now for the banter so that you can easily skip it and find where the actual episode starts. So if you're not interested in the banter, just go there and then the episode starts. So we will, we're adding that to YouTube. We'll make it hopefully a little bit easier for you. With that said, if you have feedback like that for us, if you have like any complaints, anything you want us to change about the episodes, or like positive feedback, if you just want to say what you liked about the shows that you've been listening to, please reach out to us and let us know about that. So send an email. That's the best way, to podcast@theselfrecordingband.com, or send me a DM on Instagram if you're there, or Malcolm. It's like @Benedict Hein or @Malcolm Owen Flood on Instagram. And we really want to encourage you to actually do that. We want to collect more feedback because, as you see, when people tell us something like that, we listen and we improve the episodes. And the more feedback we get, the more we can improve the episodes and the whole show. So we really appreciate that. Just reach out, send a quick message, tell us what you like, what you didn't like, what we should do in the future, any episode ideas or whatever. We really listen, and your topic might become a podcast episode, right? We did that a bunch of times in the past, and so please do that. Reach out. Thank you so much.
Yeah, please do. We only hear from a very select amount of people that actually listen to this. So maybe we think people don't mind the banter, but you all hate it. So it's important that you let us know if you want us to shut up and get to the content.
Exactly.
It's very, very valuable. But on the other hand, if you do like the banter, and you want us to keep going with what we've been doing, and you wish we had 30 minutes of banter every episode, you should also let us know that. We need both sides of the picture.
Absolutely. So podcast@theselfrecordingband.com, or just DM Malcolm or myself. It's @Malcolm Owen Flood or @Benedict Hein on Instagram. Awesome.
Yes, please.
So, do we have anything to talk about when it comes to
I do, and we can keep it quick.
Yeah.
We can keep it quick. Okay. This is just something funny, and I encourage everybody to check this out if you haven't. And Benny, I actually want your opinion on this. I don't know if you've seen it, but I made like a very tongue-in-cheek, what I thought was comedic YouTube short, where I essentially said, I only need one more guitar. I have a Les Paul, I've got a Strat, I've got a bass, I've got another Les Paul, but I don't have a Tele. So I only need one more guitar. And that's like obviously a joke. I've got amazing guitars, a lot of them, and I do want more guitars, but it's always one more guitar. And this, it
That's
went
true.
pretty, like, I got a crap load of views on YouTube, but then on TikTok, it went just insane. It's like past 50,000.
Oh, really?
Um, and and what's fascinating though is that like maybe 10% think I'm joking, and these most people are like, "What about like dude, you don't have a hollow body? What about like a Gretsch or like what about a Warlock like my PC Rich?" And I'm like, "What? Like, you're totally missing the point."
That's hilarious.
It's just fascinating. I'm like, "Whoa." And like I don't really need anything. If you can't make a record with the guitars behind me on this wall, if you're watching the video, like you're doing it wrong. Like
Yeah.
the bases are covered. It's all just a want. There's no need involved.
Yes, for sure. In fact, you just sold a telly, right? Didn't haven't you? Like,
I did. Yeah,
yeah.
I did. I want it back, but
Yeah, that's super funny. And it also goes to show that if you make a funny or like a polarizing, whatever, reel or short or TikTok, whatever, that's made for the platform, it just works if you do it correctly. And if you post what we do for the podcast, oftentimes like these snippets that often have very, very valuable, good content, at least I would think so. This stuff doesn't do nearly as well as the purpose made stuff. I just want to say that because I've been posting on to TikTok and Reels forever, and some of them do well, but most of them have just a couple hundred views because it's not made for the platform. It's just a snippet of the podcast. And although the information is really good, it's never as good as like a funny, polarizing, whatever statement that
yeah,
you make. That's just another proof of that.
yeah, yeah, totally.
But yeah, that's cool though. So, was there any good recommendation that you consider, or
um,
did you really don't need another guitar?
I mean, like, no, I don't need. I want another guitar. I think Tellys are one of the best studio guitars you can have. So that's why I said it in that video. But like, ultimately, I could have said anything, you know. And once I have a Telly, I'm going to be like, you know what? I would love one of those fan fretted guitar or 7 string. You know, it's like
Yeah.
it's just it was literally just comedic. But
Yeah.
yeah. But what's funny, I think, is that I think people getting engaged with it about thinking, no, a telly's not what you need. You need this, is what made it do well. You know, it's just all this interaction on
Yeah.
social media. Funny world out there for sure.
Yeah.
But
Totally. But congrats on the amount of views, though. That's good.
yeah, I mean, I don't think I don't know. TikTok's a weird place.
Yes.
On, it's like a much darker, weirder spot than, say, YouTube. I like
Yeah.
YouTube.
Yeah, for sure. But you never know. You never know.
You
Attention
never
is
know.
good.
Yeah.
So good to today's episode because I don't really have anything exciting to share, if I'm really honest. At least nothing that I can think about now. So let's just go to today's episode.
Yeah, we got a good episode. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, and as I said, home recording 101. If we were to start over in 2023, this is what we would do and how we
Yes.
would do it.
You know what I would do? I would not buy another guitar to get started recording.
Yeah, probably not. No. So the reason why we want to why we wanted to do this is because as I said, like it's good for the people just starting out, just to make it less overwhelming, to help you not waste money and time. But then also there's a lot that goes um, into recording your own music. And even if you've been at it for a while, you might have overlooked something, or maybe you have a bottleneck that you should have solved a long time ago. And maybe this episode helps you solve that. So most people, as we often say, don't need to hear about the advanced stuff, but that's the stuff that most people talk about on YouTube, on the internet in general. But most people need to hear the basics more often, actually. And a lot of people just want to know, how do I start? Like, what gear do I need? How do I set it up? How do I get those first recordings onto my hard drive? And this is what this episode is going to be about. And we're going to do it like in a step-by-step plan sort of way. And we're just going to go through that. And if you have any follow-up questions, always reach out to us. And then we're happy to do another one or a part two. We'll see how much we can fit into one episode because there's a lot to cover. So we're going to do it it's like a two-part thing where, like in one episode, hopefully, but we're going to start by with the real basics, and then with a list of things to get and things you might be able to skip in the beginning, and then we're going to talk about things to learn, so the gear and things you actually need to learn and do. So I would say,
Yeah.
okay, go ahead, Malcolm.
One
do you have
thing I
to say
want
this?
to add on to this, in case somebody just heard that and was like, well, I'm not a beginner, I don't need this.
Yeah.
this episode's still for you. It's actually, if I'm honest, there was something on this list that just before we started recording this, it was like I need to work on that. So, and there is like a little bit of a thing where people can get really good at something while still missing what may be kind of a fundamental part of the skill. Like, for example, I guarantee there's someone listening to this that is a fantastic guitarist that doesn't like couldn't tell you the name of the strings on their guitar like very easily. You know, they'd have to think about it, or like what each note is on like each fret kind of thing. Like these are really not hard things to do or understand or learn, but you don't necessarily need to do it to learn to play guitar. Does it help? Yes, absolutely. So what I'm saying is that there's some fundamental skills that we're going to talk about in this episode that you may have skipped over in your journey to become, you know, a recording DIY musician or band. And if you did skip one of these, that's okay. But now this is your reminder that, okay, I should go build and learn that skill set because that's going to just make everything else a little stronger.
Yes, yes, for sure. Very well said. So, yeah, let's start. The first thing, and this is one that it's one of those actually that is relevant for everybody. So, the first thing is remember, and before you do anything, like remember and always keep in mind what you're actually making and why you're making it. So, because this will help you stick with it and overcome the roadblocks that will inevitably come up. What I mean by this is there was a reason you started recording, or you wanted to you record a song or something. There was a project or an idea that you had, or maybe it was a dream that you had years ago and now you're finally actually doing it, or there's a goal for your band, or maybe you want to start doing it yourself because you have had a bad experience going to a studio or whatever. There was a reason why you wanted to do this. And if you keep that in mind, and also then if you keep in mind what you're trying to capture, what you're trying to make, like the vision of what you're doing here, what the outcome should be, what your songs should eventually sound and feel like, if you have that, this will make you stick to it, as I said, because if you lose sight of that, it's kind of it can get like frustrating, or you just stop it because you lose the motivation, the why, because it's going to be hard at some point. It's not easy to learn that. So just remember that. And also, it's going to help you make better decisions if you have a strong vision, if you have a sound in your head, if you know what you're going for, will help you make better decisions. You will be more focused. So that is something I have to remind myself all the time, especially when something's frustrating, when I try to figure something out, but it seems like I can't, or if I can't get the sound that I want, I have to remind myself of like the thing that I actually wanted to do, the sound that I was trying to get, or the reason I was trying to do this. When I learn something new that is hard, I have to remind myself of the why I'm doing this, because otherwise I will just quit and do something else.
Right.
So yeah, this is just something I
Now,
want to say because it is hard, and I'm working with people all the time in my coaching program, and I see the challenges that they have, and they go in super motivated and they want to do it all, and then almost for everybody there comes a point where it kind of turns into work or like into effort because it's not easy. And those who have that strong why and that motivation, they have an easier time just sticking with it. And the ones who sort of forget that, they start to question everything, and it's hard to get them back on track, basically. So yeah,
yeah, yeah, have a finish line in mind for sure. Just something to aim towards, you know, because by the time you get to editing your vocals or something, and you haven't recorded your voice before. No, but that's never a good experience recording your voice for the first
yeah,
time.
yeah.
A lot of people give up at that point. So you got to have that like, okay, what am I trying to do here? Why did I want to make this in the first place in mind so that you don't get discouraged at your first failure? Got to keep going.
Yes, totally. Cool. So the next thing is make it less overwhelming by breaking it down into smaller chunks. Like if you go in and you look at the whole thing, like I have to set up my first home studio and I want to record my music. This is a very overwhelming thought. There's so much that goes into it, and you might quit before you even start if you think about it like that. But if you make it less overwhelming and you break it down into smaller chunks, you can start by, okay, um, I'm gonna need a computer. So which is gonna be like what is a computer that would work for that? And then okay, and now I'm gonna need a way to get the sound in and out of my computer. So you're looking for an interface. Like that's the way you
Hmm.
can approach the gear thing. When it comes to actually learning how to record, you can be like, I need to know where to put the mic to get a good like source tone. And when I figured that out, I can think about how do I now correct my performance? Like how do I edit these things? Whatever. Like, it doesn't really matter. Um, depending on like it depends on what applies to you here in your situation, but just break it down into chunks and don't look at the whole overwhelming thing. There's one analogy that I wanted to bring up here when it's like, Malcolm and I are both runners, or at least we I don't know how about you, Malcolm, if you're still doing it, but I'm
I still
still.
consider myself a runner. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about it for 16 minutes here.
No, no, we won't do that. But I will just say that when I go out on a run, especially a long run or a challenging workout or a fast run, something that is I really don't want to do, or something that immediately gets hard after like a few miles or a few minutes. If I think about the whole thing, I might just quit. If I think about how far I have to go till I made it, like this is not a very motivating thing to think about. But if I just, so whenever I'm in this situation, if I just think, I need to get to this next tree that I see there, and then I focus
Mm,
on that tree and I get there. And then when I'm there, I'm like, okay, now I have to get to this tree. And all I
yeah.
focus on is the next tree, and then I make it there. And I just keep going like that until I made it through the whole run. And that's so much easier if I do it that way. And
Yeah,
that's, and
it's
yeah.
such a good tip, especially on like the challenge. The more challenging, the more important that idea is. Like if I'm doing sprints, it's like, okay, I just got to make it to that freaking signpost. But then what
Yeah.
happens is you get there and you're like, I can go further, but
Yeah.
you didn't think you could even get there at the beginning, right? And you just keep pushing it, pushing it. Like it's powerful. Achieving your goal allows you to have more gas in the tank in a way. So you want to set the goal so that you can actually hit it. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then that's going to give you like just like that good feeling of like success and allow you to even go further.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So then, that's the last thing here before we get into the actual gear and actionable like recording techniques and all of that. Start with your songs, your arrangement, your instruments, and your playing technique before you think about all the other stuff and the recording gear, because it all really doesn't matter if the song is not good, if the arrangement is not good, if your instrument is bad sounding or like not set up properly, or if you just suck playing your instrument. So focus on these things first before you're capturing it. I mean, you don't have to be the best in the world, of course, and an old beat up instrument can sound cool in the right hands. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but just make sure that what you have there, the source that you're trying to capture and the songs you're trying to record, that they are what you want, and that you don't sabotage yourself, because yeah, that's
Yep.
just, I can't stress this enough. It's like really, really, really important. And so many people skip this. Like so many people make decent recordings of just shitty songs that aren't played well. So don't be that. So it's
Yeah.
just so important.
Yeah, like the kind of thesis of this episode was what would we do if we were starting over? And I think like for me, and how long it's been since I've like actually really done a lot of tracking for recording. Like I've just been mixing and not really being the player for so long. The first thing I would do is start regimenting and scheduling metronome practice like all the time. Like I would just need to get my chops up with a metronome way better than where they're at right now, I'm sure. Where it used to be something I had down, but like at this point, if I was starting over in 2023, like that type of practice for recording, specifically practicing for recording, would be like the top of my list before looking at gear. And then I mean, right before that would be, write the songs, make good
Yeah.
songs, like you said, arrangement, songwriting, but then like the actual practice and preparation of being able to play it for the studio in a way that sounds amazing. That would be a huge goal of mine.
Yes, 100%. And just know that it's up to you to decide what is good or not. It's not. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be 100% like on the grid or in time. It can be, if might be something that we consider not tight enough, but you absolutely love it. And the only thing that matters is that you like it and that you know that what I have here is something I want to record and I'm happy with. So,
Mm.
nobody's going to judge you. It's not a competition either. So just feel free to record whatever you want, but don't trick yourself or don't talk yourself into recording something that you actually know should be improved first. That's the thing, basically.
Uh,
Like you have to like it and you have to be confident that you actually want to put that out into the world. You don't want to be one of those who release a song and then tell everybody, yeah, I know that this and that wasn't right, but because it was because of this and that. So there are a lot of people who sent me stuff and immediately apologize for certain things in the recordings when they sent me their stuff to listen to. And I'm always thinking like, why didn't you get it right then if you know those things, right?
Right.
So
That's fascinating. Yeah.
yeah.
You know, you just reminded me of like a feeling that I've totally forgotten about since I haven't like, worked as a band, like been a band for so long. But there's this hugely important step of recording a song to find out even if it's good. Because songs, when you play them with your band versus when you hear them recorded, are totally different things. Because one can be really fun to play, but not be fun
Hmm.
to listen to. And you don't know until you've made a demo of it, which is just like such an important thing. Because like you see this with bands all the time, is when they like have an idea of what the single's going to be, and then you the producer record it, and you're like, whoa, these guys don't know what they're talking about. Like that
Yeah.
song's doesn't have a chorus. Like
Yeah.
it's just like an 8-minute guitar solo. Like
Yeah.
yeah, nobody's going to listen to this. Um, that is such a real thing, and I like totally forgotten about that feeling of like, oh, this song's gonna bang, and then we record it, and like we got to cut this song, it's no good,
Yeah.
or we got to change it dramatically.
Yeah.
There's such a revealing, like. It's almost like looking in a mirror for the first time when you finally record a song. You're like, all right, is this any good? Oh, it's kind of boring. Uh-oh. Okay, we got to do something.
Yeah. Which also, this is not what this episode is about, but kind of is part of this conversation, is that you need to do pre-pro and demos before you go into the final recording session, because otherwise you
Yeah.
don't know. And so this all goes together. But you can only do pre-pro or record anything if you have a home studio, like some
Mm,
basic gear. So with that out of the way, let's get to the gear you need when you set up the home studio. So we assume you have good songs. We assume you can play your instruments. We assume you know why you actually want to do this, what your goals are. At least a vague version of that. It
yeah.
will become clearer as the longer you do it, I think. But we assume all of that, and now you're ready to start. So only get the gear you really need, I would say, because most people, and myself included, we love gear, and it can take up a lot of our time, and we go down rabbit holes. We endlessly research things. We buy stuff we actually don't need. And in the beginning, when I started out, I bought like a ton of stuff that I never really needed. I had a mixing desk that I never needed, like a cheap one that wasn't good anyway, but I thought I needed one because I saw it on studio pictures. I had a rack with like cheap outboard gear because I saw that too on pictures. So I couldn't afford the good stuff. So I bought a bunch of cheap compressors and thought I needed those. Ended up getting rid of all of those, of course, again. Bought a couple of like really useless things until I figured out what really matters. So only get the gear you really need. And I'd say when you start, the only things you really need is a computer, an interface. The interface is basically replaces the sound card in your computer. So it's just the thing
Yeah.
you need to get the sound into the computer and out of the computer so you can listen to it in good quality. So a computer,
Mhm.
the interface between the outside world and the computer. Then you need microphones, assuming you capture like real acoustic instruments, signals, or vocals. Then you need a DAW, a DAW, which is a digital audio workstation. It's a program that runs on your computer that you use to record your music. You need headphones and or monitor speakers, so some device that you trust where you can listen to the things you record. And then
Yep.
you need, if you use speakers, you need basic room treatment. If you record acoustic instruments, you need basic room treatment to make the room sound good or at least usable. And then you need all kinds of supplies like strings, drum heads, picks, the small stuff we tend to forget that you absolutely need when you go into a session. And that's about it. So the computer, including the interface and the software, and I'm just talking about the big software, not even plugins, like just a DAW software.
Yeah. Just the
You
DAW.
need something to listen on, like headphones or speakers. You need a usable room, and then some small things that you shouldn't forget. And that's about it. I don't think we should get into like the details on all of these things, like super into detail, because there's so much out there. Like we can't recommend the one microphone or the one thing, and we have episodes on that too, I think. So
Right.
I will just say that a few things have changed over the years. Recording gear has been pretty good for a while. It's like interfaces and all that stuff has been pretty decent for a while. So you really can't go super wrong, in my opinion, if you do a little bit of research, because all the current stuff just works, I'd say, for starters.
Yep.
But a few things have changed lately where, and I need to update my gear guides and stuff like that as well there, because I really think that the typical recommendations we had for a while, like the Focusrite Scarletts and a couple of other entry-level interfaces are maybe not the best options anymore these days, because it got even better at an even more like affordable price point.
Right.
And now you can get things like the current. I was just looking at the current. We're talking about interfaces. I was just looking at the current Audient Evo series, for example. Really, really great interfaces with smart features like automatic gain adjustment. So you just play the instrument and it sets the gain automatically to leave enough headroom, and like things like smart things like that haven't been there a few years ago. The overall quality of converters and preamps and parts that are built to into an interface have become even better. So I think it pays off to just do a little bit of research, read the reviews, and then you'll find something for a few $100 that will do the job just fine. But it doesn't have to be the Scarlett, which has been the recommendation for years now. And I don't want to talk
Yeah,
shit about
that's been.
Focusrite, and maybe they will come out with something new soon too. But I think there's better things now. So
Yeah, I think I really do want to clarify that if you have a Focusrite Scarlett,
yeah,
it doesn't mean it's bad.
no,
It's totally fine. It worked then, it still works, you know? It's just that your money can go a little farther if you're buying something new today, potentially.
yes,
That said, the Focusrite Scarlett got an update, recently,
yeah.
within the last year, I think, and apparently it was improved. So I do wonder if the shootouts that have kind of made it fall a little behind included that latest version, you know?
Could be, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so I don't know. So that's why I'm saying like
Yeah.
it's totally fine. Like it's
Yes.
gonna do the job. But yeah, if you want to buy once, just do a quick bit of research, but you're gonna be fine no matter kind of what you get in that price range. It's pretty awesome these days.
Totally. I just picked that one actually because it's the absolute like common cliche recommendation that everybody gives. And I just want to say that there's so many good options now that it can be overwhelming. But on the other hand, if you do a little research and you just look at the top sellers with the best reviews and stuff, and like new products that get great reviews, you'll find something that suits your needs. The thing that I
Yeah.
always preach is unchanged though. That is, it's more about the features you need than it is about the sound quality. It doesn't matter
Right.
if one preamp that's built into it is better than the other one, or the converters, or any of that. All of that is
Yeah.
good. What matters is that you have the amounts of ins and outs that you need, that you have the right like actual interface, like the connection to the computer that works for you, like USB or
Yeah.
Thunderbolt or whatever you want to use. That it has, the functionality that you need. If you need MIDI ports, have a look at that. If you need a DI input, if you need like two or more headphone outs, or if one is enough, these types of things. This is what really matters, because they will all sound fine. You just need to find the features
Totally.
that you need, I think. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I think you're spot on, because if you look up, Focusrite Scarlett shootout with something else, it's probably gonna be, like, about the sound quality and
yeah,
totally ignore the features. Like, for me, if I was looking for an interface today, the first thing I would be looking for is headphone outputs. How many headphone outputs does it have? Which is probably what I would say most people listening to this podcast wouldn't even consider. But for me, that's hugely important. If I want to be able to sit and run the computer with a vocalist beside me singing, we both need headphones. So two isolated headphones with different volumes, super cool feature.
yes,
Just as
absolutely.
an example.
Absolutely. And it can also be one headphone out, but multiple line outs, for example. And then you can connect a headphone
Yep.
amp to those line outs, like just outputs in general, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
And one thing, so because I said, what would we do if were to start over? So what I would do when I would buy something, I personally would buy a Mac, which is not what you need to do now, but I would buy a Mac because I just love Apple computers, and I've been in this whole universe for so long that I just can't think of anything. I can't imagine going back to Windows. But I'm not saying it's better. It's just what I would do. I would get a Mac. Not like, it doesn't have to be a super expensive one. Like, even the entry level ones are more than good enough for most needs. So I would do that. And when it comes to interfaces, I would get. Probably, this is a little more expensive, but it has a reason that I would do that. I would get an RME, and I say that because one thing that I value in recording gear, especially with interfaces, is the stability. And like those rock solid drivers, the super low latency, and just the problem free operation that I've had on my RME interface since like 10 years or so. This is
Yep.
what I really, really, what I'm looking for. So I would get, whatever I just configured a home studio for someone, and I recommended the Fireface UCX or UFX or whatever it's called, like a small thing with like two mic preamps. It has like 6 outputs, I think, for monitors and headphones. It has MIDI, it has great converters, but the most important thing, rock solid drivers. So that's just what I personally would do. It costs a little more money than the entry level interfaces, but you will have it forever, and it's not going to cause you problems, hopefully. So
Yeah, yeah. They're a great company, make great gear for sure. I don't really have a recommendation for what I would say, just because, like we said, they're all going to be fine.
yeah,
So
yeah,
just go and get one.
exactly. Cool. Now the next one, and yeah. Oh, so sorry. One more thing. Rock solid drivers, but also latency is something you need to think about, and
It
whether
is
or not you want
serious.
to be able to track through plugins. And like this is sounding a little complicated, like, but I'm trying to explain it real quick. Latency is when you record something into the computer. It goes into the computer and then it goes back out of the computer into the interface. And if you want to hear yourself while you are recording, and some interfaces let you do that through something called direct monitoring, where the signal doesn't go into the computer; it stays in the interface and goes out of the interface immediately to your headphones. This is like zero latency monitoring. If you want to do that, then like that's easy. Even the entry level interfaces can do it because it's purely analog and it doesn't cause any sort of latency. The downside is though that you can't use any effects on your vocals for monitoring, like compression or reverb or any of that with some interfaces. So if you want to hear effects on your voice or your instruments while you're recording, with those types of interfaces, you would have to monitor through the DAW and monitor through plugins, which is going to cause latency again. So the questions you need to ask yourself is, you most definitely want to hear yourself while recording, but you need to ask yourself, do I need like reverb or delays or compression or EQ or any effects while I'm recording? Do I need to hear that in real time? And if so, does the interface provide that as like a standalone sort of thing built into the interface with zero latency? Some interfaces do that. Some interfaces do that. Or is the latency low enough and my computer powerful enough so that I can run through the DAW and back out without latency?
Right.
Sounds really complex, but maybe listen to that again a couple of times and then do some research. That's a really important question, though, because monitoring is key to good performance. And that's one of the downsides of the cheaper interfaces, that they often don't give you that option. They don't have built-in effects sometimes. They just have the knob where you can do the direct hardware monitoring, but then it's like bone dry. And so
Yeah.
if you need the effects on the monitoring chain, you need to upgrade the interface to something with a DSP built-in effects section, or you need something with low enough latency so that you can run through the computer and back out.
Yeah. So a classic example is wanting to record using an amp sim. So you're just running a clean DI into your interface, maybe even using the high Z input on your interface. That if you were to direct monitor that, you're just listening to a DI guitar, which doesn't sound very pleasing, right? It's not
Yeah.
very inspiring.
Yeah.
You want to hear the amp sim that's in your DAW. So you need that to come to you at a low enough latency that you can still play your parts, which is possible. Just worth making sure that that's going to work.
Yeah. Cool. Now, next thing is microphones. So most people are going to need a vocal mic. Like most everyone who records vocals will need a vocal mic. Not everyone needs more, because some people just do like DI guitars and programmed drums. And if that's you, then you just need a vocal mic. If you record any kinds of instruments, you need instrument mics too. And I think we both agree that 57 is the thing you can still, like, you could get. I mean, there's more options these days, but something like that, an affordable, good quality dynamic microphone as an all-purpose instrument microphone is what I would start with, and it would probably be a 57 even today.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I freaking love those mics.
Yeah. Yeah.
They sound awesome. Yeah, I'm coming around on the SM7B again as well. It's more versatile than you give, like, you only really see it
Hmm.
on vocals, but, like, it's
Hmm.
actually pretty kick-ass on a lot of things, so it's another option.
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah. So all-purpose dynamic instrument mic. Then just think about what you're trying to record. If you record a full drum kit, you need more, of course. If you're recording
Yeah.
acoustic guitar or any other like quieter instruments, maybe a pair of like small diaphragm condensers is what you want. But just get the things you really need. So I think in most scenarios, a couple of 57s if you're doing like drums or multi-mic things, a pair of small diaphragm condensers and a vocal
Mhm.
mic will do, maybe a kick drum mic or something will do, but you don't need to have a mic locker with like 3 different large condensers and whatever. When you start out, you don't need that. When it comes to vocal mics, I think we talked about that on other episodes in depth. our recommendation is a dynamic mic as well, like SM7 or
Yep.
any of those mics that are like that, because it takes the room out of the equation to a degree. It's easy to mix. It's not very sibilant. It fits a lot of voices. So I think it gives you a better quality for the money than a cheap condenser mic. There are some affordable condensers that are good, but in general, I would still recommend a dynamic mic for vocals as well
Yeah.
for most people.
There's many reasons, and again, I think we've had episodes
Yeah.
on this. I've got YouTube videos about this. It's like, you have to have a treated room, you need to have a quiet environment, like, if you're using condenser microphones, this is, right? Where a dynamic microphone really takes care of a lot of that for you. So, dynamic's like an easy first choice. If you're not sure, go dynamic. Um, I wanna add that the SM57 is also an underrated vocal mic.
Yes. Yes.
So if you've already got that, you should try it and just see what you think. For some voices, it's such a cool sound, and, like, if it's the difference between you waiting to record until you can afford a, like, higher quality vocal mic or just getting it done, I think a 57 is gonna give you something that you'll probably be totally happy with. But you need a pop filter.
Yeah, oh, yeah, totally. If you have a slightly higher budget, something like a modeling mic can be cool. So the one that I'm
Oh,
talking
yeah.
into right now is the Slate Digital ML1. That gives you almost like a full mic locker on your computer. So I'm using it without any emulation right now. It's just the sound of the mic. It's very neutral sounding, but you can make it sound like several famous types like of microphones. Does it sound exactly the same? Probably not, but if you compare two mics of the same type, they also don't sound the same. So I don't really care.
Yeah.
But it's very flexible. You can quickly switch to another model if the sibilance is causing problems with a certain voice, or you can use one that you use in front of a guitar cab and another one that you use for vocals. And it's like very flexible. And so that might be a good option. It's a little more
Yeah.
expensive than like of course a 57 or an SM7, but still not crazy expensive. And if you think about the flexibility that you get with it, it might be worth considering.
Yeah, I think for me, that is the best bang for buck condenser microphone on the market right
Yeah.
now, that I'm aware of anyways. It's the most versatile. It's definitely good enough for professional use by a long
Yes.
shot.
Yes.
And it's on the very affordable side of microphones that meet those requirements.
Yeah. Agreed. You have your mics, you have the interface. Again, that's the sound card, basically the external sound card that you plug your mics into, and then you can record onto the computer. Now you need software to capture all of this. So when it comes to DAWs, we can't really recommend anything because it's very subjective and they're all good. The only thing we can say
Yeah.
is that there are a few ones that the people use that wouldn't recommend because of certain of like reasons we'll get into. And then with the ones that work, it highly depends, I'd say, on the type of music that you're making. More than it's not a question of like which one is better, but which one suits you and your needs, basically, similar to what we said with the interfaces. So what I mean by that is one that is very popular is GarageBand if you're on a Mac. I wouldn't recommend that unless it's just you capturing ideas and like, doing like demoing, songwriting. But if you want to record seriously or collaborate with others, I wouldn't recommend GarageBand because it's limited in like when it comes to exporting files and a couple of like basic functions that it just doesn't have. So although a lot of people use it, I wouldn't recommend it if it's not just for demos. Um, when it comes to like serious DAWs that can do everything, there's Logic, there's Cubase, there's Pro Tools, there's Ableton. These are probably the most popular ones, at least in our sort of world. Then there's FL Studio and a couple of other things that beat makers use. But I'd say these are the most popular ones. There's
Mhm.
Reaper, of course. To me, the difference is if you get the pro versions of all of these, like the big versions, they can all do everything basically. The difference to me is that, for example, Ableton works very well if you work with MIDI a lot. It's way better with
Yeah.
MIDI than Pro Tools or Cubase or any. Like Cubase is great, but Ableton is just made for that, and it's like super cool if
Yeah.
you're making electronic music or working a lot with MIDI. Awesome. If you're a rock band, I would probably not recommend Ableton, and I would go with Cubase or
Yeah.
Pro Tools or Logic
It's
instead.
not very wave friendly, wave
Yes.
file friendly comparatively.
Yeah.
Can you make it work? I'm sure. I'm
Yeah.
absolutely sure that you could record a rock album in Ableton if you had to, but
Yeah.
it's just it's designed for a different type of musician. Um, and which is totally cool, but just something to be aware of. I've got a new approach for helping people find their DAW
Hmm.
that I want to bounce off you, Benny. We've
Curious.
never talked about this, but I think what you should do uh, is figure out your learning style, which hopefully you have. So if you learn by videos, for example, find an educator on YouTube that you connect with and learn like their teaching style, and then use whatever DAW they use because they're teaching that DAW. Like I honestly think that like all of the DAWs are fantastic. You just got to find somebody that can teach it to you. It's more about learning it and becoming good with it. So I would just find somebody that like you connect with online. They've got a ton of free resources on how to use this DAW, and that's going to get you so far. I did that with video editing software just within the last 3 months, and it's been like such a good decision. Just found somebody that I was like, this guy is my type of person. His videos are great, and he uses DaVinci Resolve. I'm going to check that out. And it's just like the quickest I've ever learned anything. So that's my new recommendation for how to find a DAW.
That's such good advice, and in fact, a lot of my students do exactly that. So when they come into the coaching program, for example, they ask me what I use, or they know what I use because they saw a video or
Yeah,
something of me,
and
and
you're
then
your
they ask
teacher,
me,
right?
yeah, and then they ask me like, "Do you think it's a good idea if I just switch to Cubase?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, I love it and I use it." And so yeah, I want to use it because you use it, and then that will make it all easier. And I'm totally for that. So people actually do
There we
exactly
go.
that when they start working with me. They switch not all of them, but some of them switch to Cubase because of that reason.
Yeah, yeah. Like if you don't know how to do like if you're not already proficient with another DAW, it makes total sense.
Yeah. And the thing is, if you do that and you just pick something because of an educator that you picked and you learn that, you can switch later if you want, because when you really understood, as soon as you really understand one DAW, it's going to be way easier to switch to another DAW and learn that, because you know the
Yeah.
basics. They are kind of the same. It's different hotkeys and whatever. But I could make like give me a week, and or like give me 2 days actually, and I can run a full on session in like any DAW if I
Yeah.
study it for
Did I
12
ever
hours or
tell you
something.
about when I had to run a session in Cubase unexpectedly?
I don't remember. You might. I'm not sure.
It's a somewhat funny story.
Yeah, yeah.
Essentially was I went to Shanghai to produce a rock band, and we went to this hilarious little studio that was like in the bunker of a building. It was so hot. It was like so hot that there was water pooling on the computer.
Oh
Like
wow.
it was like that humid in this basement bunker in Shanghai. But yeah, we showed up. I had my computer and had been told that there was a USB interface that I could plug into there to run the session on, but they didn't. They had a FireWire
Oh wow.
um, interface kind of thing, so I had to use their computer, which only had Cubase, and so I just had to figure it out on the fly, and it was awesome, actually.
Yeah.
Worked totally fine. So yeah, like to prove your point, very transferable. But I was sweating in the beginning, both because of the heat and because of like, oh man, I like my workflow is destroyed. But honestly, it was fine.
Yeah, totally, totally. That's funny, and yeah, and just when I think it's faster to pick someone as an educator, use their DAW, learn it with their help, and then if you figure out that you're missing a certain feature, and you will only know once you figured out the DAW. Like in the beginning, you don't even know what you don't know. So as soon as you think that you're missing a certain feature, or you wish you could do X, Y, Z, but the DAW doesn't do it, then you can switch. And I think this approach is faster, even if that means that you have to learn two DAWs. It's faster than trying to do the research on your own, then finally deciding on one DAW, then learning it on your own, and like that just takes so long. It's so much trial and error, and if you just pick someone who shows you the DAW within a few weeks or months, and then even if you end up switching, it's still going to be faster, I think. And
Yeah, yeah,
so yeah.
totally agree.
So pick a DAW. Maybe not GarageBand unless it's really just for ideas. And again, it's not that this is a bad product. All of the things that I don't recommend it's for a reason. All the current stuff is good. It's just there's
Yeah,
downsides to some of those things. So then, and Reaper, for example, is one that I don't talk about a lot, for also for a specific reason, because Reaper is very popular too because it's very affordable. It's not free, by the way. A lot of people say that Reaper's free. It's not free. It's just like a trial period that you can extend forever, basically. But it's not free. You should pay at some point. But it's very popular because it's affordable. The thing is that all the people that I've worked with who use Reaper understand just a tiny fraction of it because it's a really complex thing. It's like the workflow, and you can customize all of it, and it's like it can do everything. It's not really intuitive. There's quite a learning curve to it, and so I'm not sure if I want to recommend it a lot to people. If you understand what it can do and if you figure it all out, it's awesome. Not just for the
Yeah.
money, but in general, it's awesome. It's really awesome. But for
It can do
most
anything. Yeah,
people,
it is good.
yeah, for most people, something a little more intuitive might be better. But up to you to decide.
So
Yeah.
this is a broad, outrageous generalization, but if you are a Windows person, I think Reaper is perfect for you.
Yeah.
If you are a Mac person, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, yeah, exactly that, exactly that. If you like to code and customize things and like go into the back end and whatever
Yeah, and
folder
look at
structures and
gray,
stuff, yeah, yeah,
just gray UI interface.
yeah, exactly. Then Reaper is your thing. If you just want things to work and have it all like look nice and colorful, and you click a button and it just does the thing you think it does, then probably not your thing. But yeah, totally right. Cool. Now, headphones, monitors. We have
Yes.
episodes on all of these things where we go into more detail, but in general, everyone needs headphones. Everyone should have some pair of speakers, but I'd say prioritize headphones. So you need them to record, and you need them to have a trustworthy sort of playback system. Because your room is not going to be perfect, especially not in the beginning. So what we always say is like get a pair of close back headphones for recording. If that is good enough, also use it for mixing or checking your recordings. If you want, get an open back pair for mixing if you prefer that. But that's about all you need. And then just get some pair of monitors just so you know what it sounds like on speakers. But it doesn't have to be the most high end thing because it's really complicated to set that up properly with the room and everything.
Yeah, yeah, and, a tip I've added to this headphone topic is that you actually need 2 headphones, one for whoever's tracking and one
Oh
for
yeah,
you probably.
yeah.
So unless you're playing all the instruments, you're gonna need a second set. They don't both have to necessarily be the same quality, as long as it's good enough to, like, track with, but somebody should have a decent one that actually represents what you should be hearing.
As soon as you dive deeper into mixing, which you shouldn't do right at the beginning, there's other things to worry about in
No.
the beginning. Focus on the recording first, absolutely important. As soon as you dive deeper into mixing, though, if that's what you want to do, then it's time to like upgrade the monitoring. You're thinking about speakers and room. Then it gets more important. But in the beginning, it's really not. And you, in fact, you shouldn't be distracted by like learning how to mix and mixing techniques and all of that in the beginning. You should really focus on the recording. Can't stress that enough. And so headphones are enough for most people. Okay, now next thing is basic room treatment. So if you have speakers, then and this depends on. I think most people will have one room. Most people won't have a control room and a recording room separately. So most home studios will be one room, probably. Might be wrong, but I'm just assuming here. If that
Yeah,
is
most.
you, then your room needs to do two things. It needs to give you, if you have speakers, it needs to give you a somewhat reliable sort of monitoring situation where you hear what's coming out of the speakers and not what's coming off of your walls, basically. And the second thing it needs to do is it needs to give you a controlled recording environment so that you can actually capture what's coming from the instrument and also not what's bouncing back off the walls. And if it's one room, there's kind of a compromise, but I'd say listen to our episodes on this topic first of all. Like the one with Yesko is really, really good for starters and in general.
Yep,
And then do some
definitely.
research and do some basic treatment first. Like don't go crazy. Don't try to like calculate and analyze and measure right away. Just strategically place absorptive material, the thicker the better, behind any sound source that you have. That includes your speakers, that includes like a drum kit or a cab or your singer. Just make sure there is absorbers around the source that you're capturing or that you're listening to get the early reflections out of the way. And then once you have that, listen to it. Listen to if there's like stuff coming from further away and if that is too much, depending on how big the room is. And then treat it further until you like the result. When in doubt, I think more is better in most cases. You can't really overdo it. Like most people don't do enough. Yeah, it's like a very complex thing to get into. Just do some basic research. Start with like basic absorbers around the thing you're capturing and behind your monitors. That's really all I can say here. And don't think it's gonna be perfect because it's very hard to get a room perfect. Just make it first goal is just to make it dry enough. Make it dry enough so
Yeah,
that you don't hear obvious reverb and reflections, and then
yeah.
you will improve over time.
It is do as much as you can at that moment kind of thing. So if all you can do at that moment and you need to get it done is hanging blankets on stands and throwing a mattress against the door, do that. But it's going to be a process that's going to continue over years. You're eventually going to build some panels and yada 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 mounted to the walls, and that's all great. But you can't really expect to just be able to be like rooms treated. So just build as you go and just make it work.
Totally. And again, we're gonna link to all of these episodes in the show notes, because on all of these topics we have like dedicated episodes. Um,
Totally. Yeah. That
yeah.
Yesco episode is like my most recommended episode that I've ever sent out. I send it out like at least once a week. It's like
Awesome. Yeah.
somebody's got a question. Oh, this answers everything.
Yes. Yes. Totally. That one's really, really great. For sure. And Jesko is awesome, has an awesome resource himself. It's
Yeah.
acousticinsider.com. If you go there, there's a blog and a great YouTube channel. And he also has
Fantastic.
a courses and all kinds of things. So just go there. Yeah, for sure. The final thing on my list here, and it's not plugins and it's not like outboard gear or anything like that, because if you pick a good DAW, it should have everything you need to begin with your home studio. And I wouldn't buy anything besides a DAW if I were to start out now. But the one thing you need though is that's the final thing on the list is like small things that we tend to forget. And those are things like cables, like quality
Mm,
cables, nothing crazy, but like quality stuff that doesn't break. Then it's like strings, picks, and different types of picks, depending on the instrument you record, of course, drum heads, adapters, all these like small little things. This list will grow over time. When you start, like in the beginning, you won't think about all of the things, but just
right.
try to think through all the stuff you want to record and what you could potentially need, and then just get a supply and make sure you have it when you need it. Because when inspiration strikes and you got your setup and you just want to go, and then you're missing that one little adapter, or you don't, a string, you need to replace a string on your guitar and you don't have any, then you have to stop, and that's frustrating. So just make sure you have all these things.
So it's embarrassing when you get into that position. You break a string, you're like, I don't have another set. Guess we're
Ex-
done. Whoops.
exactly. Exactly. And that's one of those things where I would invest more money into than, for example, plugins when you start out.
Yeah.
I would experiment with different types of strings, for example. And a pack of like bass strings can be relatively expensive. And if you need like 2, 3, 4 of them for an album, or if you want to experiment with different types, this can cost quite a bit of money. But that money is better invested than just going out and buying some sort of plugin that you just saw on YouTube when you don't actually know what to do with it yet. So
Right.
definitely buy those things first, because they are going to make more of a difference. It's really,
Yeah.
really, really important.
I had a realization about plugins the other day that's funny is like because people do love buying plugins, of course, but then it's hilarious because they end up sending it to somebody like you or I, Benny, to mix it, and they take all of the plugins off when they send it to us. So it's like you're never getting to realize the value of that plugin, really.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutely.
try and operate on just what you need for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. So to sum it up, I'd say we actually will do a two-part episode. I know I said it's going to be all in one episode, but it's just going to be too long. So let's separate the two. Let's keep this the gear episode, and the next time we're going to talk about how to actually get started once you have all these things, how to put it together, how to learn it, how to use it to record your first song, how we would
Yep.
go about it. To sum it up now, you need a computer. Some current computer is good enough. I said I would buy a Mac, but any sort of current machine that's somewhat decent will do the job, especially if you're not mixing and just recording. Get a computer if you don't have one. Get an interface, an audio interface. Get microphones, or one microphone depending on your needs. Get a DAW, the software to record with. Get a pair of headphones or two pairs of headphones if there's more than you in the room recording. Get a pair of speakers just to be able to check on speakers, but prioritize headphones. Do basic room treatment, do some research there, and start to improve your room with what you can do right now. And then make sure you have strings, cables, drum heads, picks, adapters, those types of things. And you should be good to go.
Last thing you'll need is just like a couple chairs, make it so you can actually hang out in that room.
Yeah.
A couch.
Exactly. And coffee. And coffee.
And coffee,
Absolutely.
yes, yes. But
Yes.
like really, like honestly, at that point, like Benny's list there, you've got a studio. You've got
Yeah.
everything you need to make a record. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So what would the final thing maybe to say here, what would that cost you or could that cost you? Let's say,
Mm.
let's add it up real quick. Let's just round about
Yep.
like, and let's pretend it's like, let's say US dollars. I would say interface, like a few $100
Couple $100. Yeah.
gives you a good one. Microphone, let's say like roundabout. Depending on the amount of mics you need, it's hard to tell. But like for most people, also a couple of hundred is enough.
Yep.
If it's just a vocal mic and maybe a 57 or something. The DAW, again, similar things. That would be like 50 in total would be 1,500 or something at this point. Headphones, basic room treatment, and then I would say roundabout. I'm just thinking out loud, but like roundabout 2 to 3 grand can absolutely get
Yep.
you started. If you add
I
the
was in the same
computer,
range. Yeah.
yeah, if you if you add the computer to that, let's say below, it's definitely doable, including the computer. It's doable below 5K. And
Yes.
you got something really decent that you'll have for a long time and that you can record great stuff with.
Yeah.
I'd say
Yeah. I think you're in the right price range. I think we're both assuming US here.
yes,
Um, for currency, just to keep that in mind. But that's going to give you something. You can, of course, go way higher. I did,
same here.
or probably make it happen for lower. Just like browse
Yeah,
your used marketplace on Facebook or whatever, and just scrounge some stuff if you need to. Yeah, it's all doable. You can make it happen, but that's a pretty good expectation. And something that has occurred to me, that it may seem like we're always kind of like telling you to buy stuff, but what we're really trying to do is tell you that, yeah, you're going to have to buy a lot of stuff, but this is what you should prioritize. This is like the order of like you're going to need speakers, you're going to need headphones, but headphones are way higher on that list. That's what we're saying.
yes, absolutely. We want to help you not waste money by buying the wrong things. So
Yeah, because
you
that
should. Yeah.
it's more common than you would believe to think the wrong things are important. If you walk into a music store, they will try and sell you speakers first, for sure. And
Yes.
that's not because they're evil, it's just because speakers sell. You're gonna see them, you wanna look at them, you can listen to them and hear them, they're impressive. And it's just like, yeah, studios, when you look at a studio, they've got speakers, that's what you need, right? But it's like, you don't. You could actually get by without them.
Yes, yes, totally. And if you think like 5K sounds like a lot of money, it is. But on the
Mhm.
other hand, if you are serious about this and you think, okay, so I'm spending $5,000 on my home studio setup, then I'm gonna have to invest in myself probably. I mean, you can do it with free content only, but I highly recommend investing in yourself too because it's gonna be much faster and it's gonna be lead to much better results. So whether you join my coaching program or you buy a course or you buy someone else's course, invest in yourself, add that to that, then add time to really learn it. And this is still going to cost you less than going to a professional studio and record and produce and all that, like a full length record.
Yep.
And yeah, the pro studio will sound better than what you can do in the beginning. But what you learn here and what you set up here for yourself, you can use that over and over and over again. And if you do more than just a song here and there, if you doing EPs, full length albums, or if you're going to use that for 5, 6, 7 years, whatever, over time, this is actually very affordable if you look at it that way because you want to have your music recorded anyways, right? And there's no shortcut, there's no super cheap option to get that done. You can either do it yourself or you can get it done by someone else. But in the grand scheme of things, I think even if you invest heavily in yourself, and you buy a decent home studio setup, if you can make it, like in 1 or 2 years from now, if you can make a great record, a great EP yourself, and it costs you less than $10,000, that's actually still a bargain. So
It's just a reality.
yeah,
And chances are you've probably got some of this already. You've probably got a computer, or somebody in your band does, right? Somebody's probably got a microphone that you can start with. Headphones, you probably, I mean, actually, you know what? Everybody used to have wired headphones. Not many people do anymore. So I guess that's
yeah,
changed.
yeah, yeah, totally,
um,
totally.
but yeah, you can try and make it work for a while.
One thing we've got on this list, by the way, and we're going to talk more about this next episode. But depending on the music you make, and but probably useful for most people, is like a small MIDI controller. I forgot that. So if you're watching this on YouTube, something like this, if you can see it here, like a
Right.
small MIDI controller just
Yeah.
to program things real quick. This is really handy
Yeah,
thing to
very
have, and
handy. Yeah.
it's not very expensive too. So I might
Low
add
on the
that to the
priority
list.
list, but on the list
Yeah.
for sure. There is Benny and I are at some point this year, maybe even more than once, we're going to be in the same place for the first
Yes,
time ever. We're going to
finally.
be in the
Yeah.
same physical space
Yeah.
and get to hang out. And I've been trying to brainstorm ideas for like content we could make, stuff we could do that would be cool and interesting and fun and relevant for our audience. And an idea just came to mind, and I would love for people to chime in if this interests you. But what if we tried to make a production on like as cheap as we could? So we had to like source everything and put together a like super beginner setup and then make a super high quality song as a result. That would be a fun thing to try and make happen.
That's a very cool idea, actually. Yeah, 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 yeah. Let us know if you think that's good.
Or if you have
I like it.
other ideas for us, totally let us know. Yeah. What
Totally.
was the contact email again, Betty?
Podcast at the selfrecordingband.com.
There we go. Or Instagram's fine too, guys.
Exactly. All right. So hope you found that helpful. Hope it didn't confuse you further. But yeah, just go through that list again. Go to the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, it's in the description below. And there's a link to the full show notes. If you're on your podcast app, there is a link too. There you see the list. You see links to other relevant episodes. And if you just go through that list like that, you see it's just 5, 6 bullet points, and you just check them off, get the things you need, and then listen to next week's episode when we tell you how to actually set it all up and use it.
Yeah. And that's going to be the place where we mentioned, hey, maybe you've skipped some of these like fundamental skills on your path so far. So if you're already advanced, this next episode's still going to be relevant.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for listening. Talk to you next
Okay.
week.
Take care. Bye.